briefly, in 2 or 3 sentences,
explain why you think it's important that the future of fashion technology be something that we pursue, and what can it actually add? What impact will it have on our lives? I'll let you take that. So we'll start with Yasmin, actually.
So when Lindsay contacted me for this panel, I thought it was really funny because I consider myself the least fashionable person I know. Actually, there's someone here I went to high school with, Joe, that I ran into tonight, and he can attest that I was the biggest tomboy. But in terms of how they intersect, taking that aside, I think it's one thing to make technology wearable, and it's another thing to make it useful. And these days, if it's not aesthetically pleasing, especially for women, if it's not a certain size, it's not as wearable. So I do think that the intersection finally is coming together. More companies are having or coming to the point where they are realizing that fashion plays an important part in technology, and it's great to see.
So I think I can beat Yasmin. I think I'm even less fashionable than she was when she was in high school. So yeah, I'll take that award. For us, we see kind of an opportunity for disruption in kind of the fashion industry, especially the way retailers work. Right now, a lot of their sourcing that they do is through trade shows. Trade shows are kind of trending down, not up. And so we see an opportunity where we can bring a lot of that online and the experience of discovering brands online. And so kind of, that's where we see technology taking a part in the retail industry and in the fashion industry. And also, I think kind of the next step beyond that is also kind of the in-store experience and kind of how that will change as well. That's not something we've dabbled with, but I think at least especially kind of in the context of this panel, I think that's something that's changing over time, and I think consumers will have a different experience in the store when they interact with product.
So yeah, in terms of intersection of fashion and technology, for a company like Collaboration, what we really see happening and trending is the accessibility of fashion and independent fashion designers through technology. The landscape, a lot of you probably know of Etsy, it's completely shifted in terms of in the 21st century, artists and designers' accessibility to actually create products and start a business and follow their creative passion. But where technology really enables these fashion designers to actually grow their business and follow their passion is something that has, they've been inhibited simply by the status quo, which is, big department store retailers, brick and mortar, or even currently established online marketplaces. And now that it's more accessible for these fashion designers to actually create products and create a business around what they love, technology really enables them to make that more accessible to everyone. So that's what excites me about it, and that's where I feel that the two intersect beautifully.
We get our own microphone over here. It's pretty exciting. So just by show of hands, who in the audience actually would consider them a technologist or on kind of in the technology industry? So it seems like most of you. And I think for technologists, and that's where I was, you hear the term disruption, and it's a positive term. But when it comes to wearable tech, I don't think it's necessarily a positive term. And I think with design and some of the opportunities that are presenting themselves around design right now, we have an opportunity to really make wearable tech more wearable. So it's pretty exciting for us. And also a great opportunity for a lot of people who are wearing wearable tech. You might not realize it, but you're really an early adopter. And now we're getting to the point where there's more mass market appeal. There's more general awareness of what wearable tech is, and it's not just something that millennials wear, that it's actually extending into different age groups and different types of demographics. So I think design can make that assimilation easier for people, and I think that's a huge opportunity for a lot of the artisans that are out there. That was an incredible transition to your company, I think.
So I feel like we've already started pushing tech into fashion accessories. I mean, everyone here probably has a case on their phone. These have become, a fashion accessory, and we've come to, expect something to look really good. And let's face it, to get a mass market appeal. No offense to Google Glass, but that's the anti-fashion.
That's two. So far, we've beat up on them.
I'm not, but I think it's crucial to make a product that is mass market, that is going to be part of us all the time, that is going to fit in and look like, it's a accessory as opposed to Google Glass. So.
Can I just say one more thing? So I think Google Glass is going in the right direction. It's just not completely there yet. And I think it's an example of what I was saying, which is that technology is awesome, but now design as an opportunity to make it more accessible for people.
Okay, aside from beating up on Google, that was a fun couple minutes. Now when you get into this space of talking about fashion and technology, the first response that I usually get when I ask someone about this space is, what are your first challenges, right? Like, what is the first thing that you as a firm, or you yourself as a professional, what is the first thing that you have to do in this space to articulate your product and your service? Like, what are the first challenges that you faced so far? Brian, Collaboration?
Yeah. So I would say, aside from the financing a business, which is obviously everyone's hurdle, I think really effectively communicating your brand and your story, not only for us as Collaboration, but that's really the crux of what Collaboration does for independent fashion designers, is allow them to tell their brand story and create a strong brand identity, because really what it comes down to is, consumers these days are pounded, left and right with, different marketing and different, things that try to grab their attention, but what it really comes down to is consumer buying into the story and seeing behind the scenes. So I think it's very important, not only for us as Collaboration, but for our designers and fashion designers across the globe, to be able to effectively communicate their story to the world. And yeah, that's something that we're really trying to, empower these fashion designers to do.
So you're talking about technology in terms of being a storytelling tool then, when it comes to fashion. What other ways in which, this is up to anyone, do you see technology leveraging that intersection and bring something new to a consumer they've never experienced before? One example could be Burberry. Recently they placed RFID chips in select apparel, and once you pass certain sensors in their stores, huge displays would queue, and you see, beautiful women, slow-mo, you hear techno music in the background, but that creates an experience, right? When a customer realizes that the store that they're walking into is no longer just this static room, but something that interacts with them and plays back and forth, how do you see technology beginning to change that experience, aside from just storytelling? Because I'm going to delve into that in a minute with everyone here, because I think that's one of the most key parts of technology, is the fact that it can be such a strong storytelling tool.
Yeah, and I'll pass that along, but I think I can definitely address that, pretty spot on. Technology really enables the user experience to be more customized, especially on a platform like ours. The data that we can collect from designers, instead of actually probing users for data and what they like and different filters to try to draw as much out of them, simply by having users on our platform, we're able to gather data from these designers to curate and create an optimal experience for the user, which, outside of technology, it's very hard to actually do. You don't have the data to be able to leverage to create a phenomenal user experience, and that's really key for a consumer-facing marketplace like Collaboration.
Sure, I guess I touched on this a little bit, where I think things are changing for the consumer in the store. We're not doing anything particularly on that space, but I think it's a lot more contextual. So it's exactly what you talked about, where it's you can walk into a store and it could be coupons, you could be getting price deals or things like that, or it could just be more data about that product. And I think that's where kind of the storytelling part comes in, where I think more and more it feels like a brand story is important, and it is important to know that were they locally made, or are they made in the U.S. and things like that? Do they have a social, cause to it? And so I think, that kind of contextual information while you're in the store looking at the product, technology can bring that. And so I think, that's where, the consumer experience is changing.
Okay. So you're saying technology definitely allows you to gain more information from anyone walking to your store. Now, my next question is, how do you use that information, though? Right? Not just to only create a curated environment, but what do you, like, I'm just curious if you're doing anything else to go to that next step, right? Because I've seen a lot of marketplaces online where once you go on for at least 4, 5, 6 visits, you begin to realize that the same blue jeans pop up every single time. You know you can't fit those, right? What else are you doing to, like, tell the story of your brand? That was a harder question.
I don't know if that's an
Sorry.
open question. I mean, like I said, we haven't been kind of in this space specifically, so there isn't anything we're doing apart from starting to just get information about what the brand story is. Because I think for us it's also relevant where a store or a retailer does also care what that brand story is, so it matches with them. But yeah, I mean, we're not in the consumer space, so I'll pass this one on to someone else.
Sorry about that. I threw a hardball at him. It was just in my head. Sorry. So who wants to pick that up? Dave? Dave? You scared?
So kind of just taking a step back for a second, when you talk about fashion, I think it's about wanting to feel special. Like when everybody probably has their favorite shirt, right? And when you put that on, you're like, I'm the shit tonight. This is going to be a good night. I think technology has a chance to augment that. I think when you walk into a store and the store knows you're the shit, and like things happen in displays, and maybe information's collected in a positive way that makes you feel more special and more connected with that brand, that's a huge opportunity. And I think that's where it's going. And it's going to take a little bit of time to get there, but that's a real important intersection between fashion and technology, which is making you feel special. And then there's a part 2. I think I just answered whatever question I wanted to answer. About the data?
Yeah, how would you use the data? I'm just curious.
The data stuff, frankly, scares me a little bit. I don't know exactly how, if you've ever been on Facebook and you see how much data is collected with Facebook Insights, you know the potential that's out there. I know we've put some ads on Facebook. Maybe some of you have clicked on them. And when you click on them, we get a lot of statistics, and it helps us narrow our focus, our customer market. And I think there's a chance for brands to connect with people using that data if they use it positively. But there's a lot of data out there, and I think a lot of these brands are still kind of figuring out how to use it all.
I can actually talk to what we're doing with some of the browsing behavior data for retail and online. Like, for example, with one of our customers, every item you look at has, has a brand, and it's an item, but there's 3 other contextual pieces of information that are captured with them, like, the brand, the color, and another category. And being able to understand your preferences, I think you can get a better connection to the brand with that, recommendations or marketing or offers that are actually for you in this one-to-one connection, which we really haven't been able to do. And in technology in-store, and Beacons, for example, can provide this exact same context. So even when you're in-store, can start to understand what you're interested in. This is definitely, I think, a gray area. Could be completely abused, but at the same time, I think it can allow brands to better connect with their customers. So.
Yeah, I was going to add one more thing. I think it's a very interesting question because, like you said, you buy a pair of blue jeans and then, you're supposed to buy these blue jeans over and over again. That's kind of a inherently fundamental flaw with these marketplaces that focus solely on product curation, and then therefore recommend products based on your history of product, either purchases or what you're actually clicking on and engaging with. And the way that we're actually able to leverage data in a totally different way that gives us a competitive advantage is by understanding what type of brands and what the qualities and characteristics of those designers and brands that you like and that you're engaging with, we're able to create a better recommendation engine than simply just that of that comes from a product curated marketplace. We're a designer curation marketplace, so therefore we have a lot more data and information that allows us to cater the experience and cater your shopping experience to you, versus just having bought a pair of jeans and then having us having to infer from that what you may like in the future. When we have all the qualitative characteristics of the designers that you're actually exploring, we can then more easily use algorithms to match up and I guess foresee what types of designers and products you may like, and therefore make better suggestions on that front.
See, that's what I want. I can't choose my own jeans. I need someone online telling me what to buy. Because I'm going to choose the same exact thing that I've been wearing for the past 5 years, and I'm going to look horrible. So I mean, my choices are not working. I need someone else's opinion. That's the reason why that question came out. So jumping over to the next space, mobile. How do you think mobile platforms, not just apps, even sites? I've seen some really great e-commerce sites, especially in the fashion tech space recently. One, because it's one thing to have an app, like Guild has an app and some of these websites, but I have way too many apps on my phone, and I think the best consumer experience that I've seen so far, I'm curious to see what everyone has to say. Now when it comes to mobile, like what have you seen that sticks out the most? Like what is one thing that you think the fashion tech space can do better via mobile than has been done so far?
I can start. So it was really telling over the past 2 years with some of Apple's hires from Burberry and Yves Saint Laurent. Like this is going to be the center of your wearable universe. It's the brain, and these devices that we're going to be wearing are really extensions of this. So like. I believe your wearables are going to be much less intelligent. Mobile is going to be key to driving them, and everything from analyzing data and listening to you and putting your emails up on your devices will all be driven off of your mobile phone and be based off of mobile technology.
So sort of like the Internet of Things, like your phone will be the brain, and all the devices you wear will sort of create that conversation where you can have a product like Beacon and Lively where, by the way, I'm honestly, in my opinion, amazing. I've never, for this, honestly, no one has an excuse to not pick up the phone. As far as the wife, I totally get it. I think she actually kept it in her purse because she knew you were calling. I'm just saying. But my thing is the Internet of Things, as you said, mobile will be the center of that. What are some products that you've seen so far, aside from what we have here? I mean, what have you seen in that space that you think can be done in the Internet of Things, specifically within fashion and tech?
I think the mobile piece of it is part of the experience. Anybody who's used a fuel van before, regardless of the fact that they shut it down because of Apple coming on, that experience on the mobile app is incredible. It definitely is part of the experience. And I think incorporating those two together so it's simple and it's easy and it solves a problem is where the opportunity is there.
Okay, all right.
One thing I would add is that being able to leverage this thing that's already in your pocket is going to significantly drive down the cost of these wearables. And that's one key thing in this whole ecosystem is that these can they don't need the radio antenna, they don't need their own data plan, and they can be fairly dumb devices. So.
Okay. Now, just to pedal back for 1 second, what concerns, this is open to the panel, to everyone, do you have within that space in terms of security, right? I want my watch to be so smart that I can just pay at the register and just swipe, right? And so many things like that are coming out, but in terms of security, how have you applied security to what it is you're working on, and how important is that every day moving forward as you build?
So from my point of view, when it comes to security and mobile and this whole technology space, it really comes down to ensuring that your credit card information is safe. That these payments, the world of payment processing is getting easier and easier, more fluid, to the point where it's going to be where you can just scan your watch next to something. I think it's very important to ensure that the user is comfortable, that they know where their payment data and their information is actually going. Because if they feel uncomfortable in the fact that feel that they're losing control of that, I think that could totally shift the way consumers actually feel about wearable technology and payment processing.
Yeah, I mean, I think payments probably the big one, but obviously other data privacy issues as well around personal information. I think you talked about RFID being used, and I'm not an RFID expert by any means, but I think there's still it's still not been used and adopted enough to the point where there aren't security concerns around it. I think there's still the possibility of pulling information that's being transmitted over RFID by an external reader, and what gets done with that. I think that's a it's a question. There's obviously around payments that it's very sensitive, but there's other data there that could be used in other harmful ways. So I think as with most technologies, as they mature, those problems will get figured out. But I think there's still some work to do on the RFID side.
Yeah, and we're, so I guess to give some context behind what we're doing, so the wearable technology that we're building is, it's a safety device. It's kind of, instead of having mace or a taser or anything like that, it's something wearable. It's actually, it looks like the Misfit Shine, if anybody's seen one or has one. So it has like a module that you hop in on out of whatever it is, however you want to wear it, and it emits a really loud alarm and a bright light, and the idea is when you activate it, it launches both to distract or disorient someone and then call attention to yourself, and then it messages your friends and family with your location, and it will also call 911 or campus security or whatever number you program it to call. And it's all done via low energy Bluetooth chip, which is secure, and you have to connect it to your phone. And the mobile app component, so speaking of security, it's actually a way to enrich it, because what it does is you can add safety tips in your area. So you can say, I live close to 40th and Market, and that's like a hotspot for street harassment. So you could say, oh, this is a hotspot for street harassment, and when you're approaching that location, you'll get a pop-up on the mobile phone letting you know you're about to approach that location, and that's the tip there, and it'll make your accessory vibrate and so forth. And the power behind the data we're collecting, and I feel like this is kind of on the flip side, instead of having it be used against you, it's actually used for you, because the idea is to sell it to campus security, sell it to the police department, and turn it into something useful. So find out where crime is happening, find out what the deterrents to those are, find out what the risk factors are, and make changes in those areas so they are safer. So for example, maybe increase lighting in the corner of 40th and Market, or it's been known that areas that have a lot of public transportation stops actually increase crime. Places near bars increase crime. If you're near ATM, that increases crime. So pooling that data together from people using the app for us is really, really powerful. And we're really excited about it from that data side.
That's amazing, because I've been at 40th and Market around 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
I felt harassed. So I can imagine how you must have felt. Actually, is that a working prototype? I'm curious to see what it's like when it's turned.
No.
Will it call 911 here if we press it? Is that what's going to happen? Probably.
Yeah, so no, this is the fitness tracker. This is a Misfit Shine. To me, it's actually the most fashionable, before Beacon and Lively, of course. It's the most fashionable wearable out there right now. It's really, really cool. So you can see, like here, you snap it on to a bracelet. You can actually wear it as a necklace. It's a beautiful design. Like at least once a day, someone stops and asks me what it is that I'm wearing. But we're building something similar, which is why I bought it and which is why I like it. I really like the aesthetics of it. So what we're building in terms of how it can be worn is similar. You can snap it on and off, different accessories, and it looks similar.
Now, with your work with Girl Develop It, that idea sort of stemmed from there, for this startup. working with the girls at Girl Development. By the way, I've never taken a class. I don't know if I'm allowed to, because I'm a member of the meetup group, and I'm always like, I don't know if I'm allowed to show up or not. I mean, what's the policy on that? Can I come?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So for those that don't know, no one said they attended the class before. So Girl Development, it's a nonprofit, and the idea is to empower more women to get into technology by providing them an empowered, comfortable learning environment. So most women are intimidated to get into technology because it's dominated by men. So these are classes for women and men. We're women inclusive, not women only, on building websites, building databases, mobile apps, game development, all that kind of stuff. But no, the idea actually stemmed from, so I sold my second company, and I just got tired of working. My motto used to be, work hard now, play hard later. Terrible motto. And I stayed with a company that acquired it for a year and 7 months, and it was my first 9-to-5 job. I had worked for myself previously for as long as I can remember. My parents used to own a 7-Eleven. It was a 24-hour business. So all I could think, all I knew was work. But anyway, to make a long story short, I decided I was going to get rid of my apartment, get rid of my stuff, and just travel for 6 months. And that's what I did last May. I went around South America, and the idea stemmed from a couple things that I saw. And one was I did the backpacking route. So pretty much every place that I stayed at, I met a woman that had been assaulted in some way, whether it was attempted rape or an actual sexual assault or a mugging. And when I came back, a week after I came back, a woman was raped a block from my apartment. So she was walking out to feed her meter in the neighborhood, and some guy grabbed her, beat her, dragged her to an alley, and assaulted her while her friends were waiting for her at the bar 100 yards away. And it just came to me the next day. I was like, what can be, what are some ways to combat this? And how can technology help to do this? Because I am in the technology field. And initially, it was actually taking existing self-defense tools and making them wearable. The initial idea was called the Macelet, Mace in a Bracelet. I just love that name. I want to use it somehow. But then what I found was when I met women was that, first of all, it was actually men that were more likely to buy the self-defense tools for women than they were for themselves. And that they did not, they were afraid, they were intimidated by them, they were afraid that they'd be overpowered and it would be used against them, and that they wouldn't know how to use them. So the idea of making it a safe self-defense tool is what kind of brought that about.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. I mean, for myself, I'm probably going to be one of your first customers. I could use one. I have 2 little sisters, so definitely will need one. So now, we've covered a lot. We've covered security in fashion and tech. We've covered data in fashion and tech. I feel like we've missed the most important thing of fashion and tech, which is the fun part. Looking really good and being connected to whatever you're connected to. So I'm going to open up the floor. I want each of you to share one quick anecdote about how fashion and technology, why it excites you, and just share that.
So if you haven't seen the Misfit Shine, you should definitely come up afterwards and check it out, because what I often hear, actually when I was first trying to find people to work on the Beacon and Lively project, was people who were wearing Misfit Shine and weren't even using it. They were just like, it's just cool. I just like the way it looks. And for us, that's one of the pieces of feedback we always look for, which is like somebody looks at the bracelet and be like, that's pretty cool. I'd wear it even if it didn't do anything. And that's pretty awesome. I think when you connect with somebody on an emotional level, it's like if you've ever done any kind of like user experience or user design from a mobile app or from a technology perspective, you know if you make something so easy that they don't need training on it, it's a real kind of emotional cocktail that you get. And I think you get the same thing on the fashion side when you make the technology accessible for people so that they're just like, the design is so cool, I would wear it no matter what. And that's a pretty exciting feeling. And you probably have similar stuff like on the mobile when you design. Would you like to talk about it?
Sure. I mean, I think everybody is interested in the watch trend, and it just seems like the the low-hanging fruit to get into the wearable world. And I think it's cool. I'm not sure I'm actually going to get one. I'd rather have something that's a little bit more, closer to like a fuel band, or something that's really going to be not completely standing out. Hey, I have a big watch on. I think we're going to find a lot more things. There's some really neat, even rings, for example, that you could use to control your computer or control devices. Things like that are really creative, out of the box, new ways to interact with the world around us in new ways with wearables. That's what gets me jazzed, although I do think the watches are cool. So.
That actually brings to mind one startup outside of Canada. Has anyone heard of Myo? M-Y-O. Anyone? Yes, one person. The Google Glasses, exactly. Myo is actually a wristband, right? It's gesture controlled. You can control anything that has Bluetooth 5.0 technology. And in that space, they released the API, 2-3 months ago? And you've seen amazing things from guys walking in their house, turning on the lights, turning on the TV, activating devices just with movements of their hand. That's one thing that I've seen in fashion and tech that definitely has excited me. One, because now I don't have to get up to shut the light. So that's for me. But before we open up the floor to the audience for any questions, anything anyone want to add before we open up the floor?
I want to say I think Google Glass is very cool. I'm not hating on it. I kind of want to try yours on afterwards, if that's okay. But for me, just on that question, the last question that was asked, the thing that really excites me about fashion and technology, I guess was the general crux of the question, is the sheer influence that technology, enables throughout the fashion community. I did not used to be fashionable, and I think the advent of social, social platforms and social influence through technology and fashion is something that's very fascinating. Fashion is everyone's way of expressing themselves, whether they're conscious of it or not. One way rather. And I think having these socially integrated technological platforms that can result in influence and allow you to express yourself through fashion, I think it's something that's very powerful and something that definitely excites me.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing I would add to that is I think wearables has the potential to be the next hot trend, but especially if it's functional and fashionable. When I saw the iWatch, I got really excited about it, and I was kind of fantasizing that one day maybe it would smartwatches actually replace phones. I think it's possible. So that's how I feel.
I guess to answer that question, for me, it kind of actually started at business school, and me and my co-founder, who is a lot more fashionable than I am, found that a lot of friends were trying to, start product companies and handbags, and Warby Parker came out of Wharton and things like that, and so, there was a very real problem, which is kind of how our marketplace came about, in terms of, how do they get better at selling their product, and so that's what got me really interested is how do we solve that problem, and I guess it's coming from more the technology angle of I want to solve that problem, and so that's got me excited. Hopefully along the way I'm a little more fashionable as well, which has been something that I've wanted to be anyway, and so kind of being plugged in is awesome. So
I think you're pretty fashionable. I'm wearing the weird socks here. I mean, that looks pretty fashionable to me. So we're gonna open up the floor. I'm not sure if we have a mic for the floor, or if you just project. Yeah, of course. So just project. I'll repeat your question, and then our panel here will answer your question. So, any takers? I won't point, I promise. All right, Google Glasses. Okay, so the question is, wearable tech, how can we go from each device only having one function to devices having multiple functions?
I don't know. I might. Well, now you're recording me. I can already tell you're recording me. I would like to pass this to Yasmin. I don't. You know, I understand what you're saying, and you might want everything in one device, but I think fashion is about individuality, and I don't think everybody's going to want one device. I think it depends on the person, and just like you have multiple types of shirts, depending on what you're doing, where you're going, you're going to probably want different types of devices. That's my opinion. Actually, I fight with this subject with my wife a lot, which is like, where would our bracelet be worn? And you know, we always talk about, okay, if you're at work, if you're out on the town, or if you're in kind of a social setting, and then she brings up the pool. She's like, I would wear it at the pool. I'm like, that's not really where you wear jewelry. And she's like, no, that's where I'm going to wear this bracelet at the pool. And so some people would wear it at the pool. And I think it's really easy to think that you're going to have one device for everything. But one other point I'd like to make is that when we go and we talk to jewelry makers, they immediately want to put a whole crap load of gemstones on this and style it up. And when we talk to technology people, they want to take a look at this, which is the circuit, and you guys are happy to have you come by afterward and check it out. But they immediately want to add more sensors on here, and they want to have like check your pulse, check your calories, and we actually want to do this funny video, which is like around, you know, how come you want to know what my calories, you know, are, and like, what are you saying? Are you saying I'm fat or something? You know, like it's. But so I really think. I think at the end of it, you want to solve a problem, and you want to know your customer, and you really want to be careful about like what that person wants to get out of fashion and what they want to get out of technology. I think for some people, like the Apple Watch is awesome. Like it really is. It's amazing. But for some people, that Apple Watch is too much, too fast, overwhelming, and kind of turns them off.
One thing I want to add is when we start cramming all this stuff into these devices, we were already like years behind in battery technology. And like, for example, I'd love, you know, to have a device like, you know, an iWatch that's with me all the time and, you know, can monitor my sleep cycle at night and during the day. But at some point in time, you're going to have to charge it. It can't be on you all the time. So I could actually see a separate device for different types of activities, or if I'm at the gym and I don't want to destroy my, you know, $1,000 gold iWatch. I think there's, depending on the context of what you're doing, there will be different wearables.
Yeah, and I agree with Dave. I think it really depends on your personality and what you're looking for. Like when we first started building the device, we actually tried to see if we could attach it to existing wearables, because there's so much competition these days for your wrist. We were like, okay, how can we build it so that it's a magnet that attaches to existing jewelry, or how can we build it so it attaches to existing Fitbits? And even actually this Misfit Shine, we were actually trying to get it to the same size module so that it fits into their accessories. I don't know if there's any legal issues with that, but we really tried. And I think when it comes down to it, I think the ones that are most important to you, and what I hope happens is that down the line, you know, they'll consolidate, and what you want, you can kind of pick and choose.
All right, I'm going to try to remember that entire question. Two-part question. First part is, where is the disconnect that you see between not having one device that has everything on it, but how do you stop yourself from reaching for your phone to satisfy certain needs? And the second part of that question was, where do you see wearable, fashionable technology going in the next decade? 10 years from now, where will this conversation be happening?
I'll answer the second part of the question. So I think in 10 years from now, I think textiles, I think microchips, actually getting chips implanted into your body. I would sign up for that. I'm actually get really excited about that. So I think I see that kind of becoming more popular in the next 10, 20 years. And then for the first part of the question, I think the Apple iWatch, I think we're going to find out with the Apple iWatch. I think things that require an immediate response, things like when I saw the messaging through the watch, I could see, you know, not pulling my phone for that. But I think it's still too, it's still separate. I haven't seen anything that would. I do think one day it will replace it, but I haven't seen it quite yet.
I would say that the number one thing that I'm excited for is Graphene. Has anybody heard of that? Which is going to give us clear circuit boards. And these devices no longer have to be opaque. They'll be part of the things that we're wearing. And I'm not 100% sure where we're going to go with it, but it's a whole new world in wearables once that's finally starting to commercialize, and it's happening now. So that's the number one thing I'm excited about.
Just a little context. Graphene is, you can fill in if I'm a little wrong here, it's graphite, right? That is then pounded thinly, and then the compact lasers then used to flatten it out. So it's this super conductive, very, very thin material that recently was found, last year? It started being used last year, right? So it's still at the infancy of where this material is, but there's a huge application possibly to fashionable tech. Okay, so the question was, when deciding to build a wearable, what networks do you first consider, from Bluetooth 5.0 to Wi-Fi, and what metrics do you look at when launching something like this, when creating a product, right? What do you look at as far as data usage, and where are your thoughts as far as the metrics that you used to first begin the infancy of building a wearable device?
So I think power consumption is probably the biggest right now. Scott nailed it. I mean, that's when you're talking about size, power consumption is huge. Then you have to think about what problem you're trying to solve and whether you need to have wireless access. I think you'll see more mobile devices actually have wireless access, so they're not tethered to the phone, in my opinion. We went with Bluetooth because it kind of just sips at the battery, and it kind of does this sleep-wake thing, which kind of really helps control the power. The other thing that a lot of manufacturers and designers are looking at are, we're using an off-the-shelf Bluetooth chip. And that's great because it gets us to market faster. And it's also small, and it also gets us past all the FCC certifications. You do have like a radio on your wrist pretty much. So if you were to custom create that Bluetooth chip, which is what a lot of people do with batteries right now, which is custom create their batteries, on a chip, on the radio side, you would have to go through FCC certifications, and that could be a lot of money. So I think it's about making sure you're solving the problem that you have in front of you.
So the question is, do you see a space for wearable tech for kids?
Yeah, one of the things we want to do eventually is go down verticals and target kids and the elderly, especially. I think with kids, it has to be really cheap and durable. I don't know if I've seen that much wearables for kids. I have seen, the collars that they put on dogs to find out, like, when they get lost. I've actually seen bracelets.
Wait, the collar was on a child?
Well, they're not I've seen the bracelet version of, like, the GPS, or where they use geofencing, and if they go too far from the house, they get an alert and they come back. But yeah.
Maybe a shock would help. Like, you reach the end of the yard, you get a little nice shock.
I actually have 8-year-old twins. And the first time they got onto a laptop, they poked at the screen, and they're like, this is broken, because they were just kind of raised on touch screens, and they're just really, really spoiled kids. So they've just grown up with the technology. Everything is a touch screen to them. And I think you're going to start seeing children who just understand the wearable tech, and it is just infused into their lives, and it will become even more invisible, whether it's graphene or whether they just don't even look at the things that are on your wrist or around your collar or wherever we're tracking the kids. But I do think it'll just be part of the fashion, sort of like Back to the Future 2. It'll be like that hoverboard. No, I went too far. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the question was, what do you see as something being disruptive within the biotech and wearable technology sector? Where do you see wearables going within that?
This one's This one's pretty easy, actually. I've been very interested in medication compliance and how people stay on their regimen. I think this is the perfect device to have the reminder, even in elderly, of like, you need to take your medication and have a way. They don't even need to have necessarily a phone. It could be something like this that's sitting in their house that's plugged in. But this can be the endpoint for the reminder and also the feedback that they did take their medication. At the same time, could be taking vitals on a daily basis. I think there's something to this. In addition to us getting, looking at how many steps we took, actually keeping track of other information, for people that need to be cared for, it's going to be much easier with something like this. And you could look great doing it.
Yeah, and I think I get really excited when I think of wearable technology in terms of how it can help people with disabilities. So people that can't see, helping them see again. I've seen contact lenses that can now help the blind see. Those that that can't hear, helping them hear, that can't walk, helping them move. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to help the disabled, which is really exciting when you think about how we can help the underprivileged or the ones that have some type of disability.
I knew I missed something. I knew it. So the question was, where do you see technology infusing into textiles and the use of fashion in the future?
So I guess I'll start when the question at the back about kind of where the technology will be in 10 years in kind of the fashion tech space. That's what I was actually thinking of more of that. I'd heard of a fabric that basically is a solar panel as well. It's like flexible solar panel, which is really cool, which might solve your battery problems as well because you can recharge the wearable at the same time. So I think that's the future. I mean, I can definitely envision a fabric where you can design your own design and wear it on your T-shirt, on that day. So it's you can draw it on your touchpad somewhere, and you can be wearing it in like seconds. I can definitely see that happening, and I think it feels a little early to me, but I think someone's going to go out there and do it and make it happen.
I'd actually take that one step forward, and it's cool to be solar, but I've actually thought of ways to pull the heat and energy off of your body in your clothing to help recharge these devices that are on you all the time and your locomotion, things like that. I think we're going to figure that out sometime in the near future because it really is, it's one of the biggest hurdles to all this technology.
Yeah, I totally agree, and as well as just harnessing, this gets back to the power, not so much, fashion tech, but just harnessing kind of the signals, and you already see that with kind of passive RFID, but, the technology is getting better and better, where I think the battery power problem will get solved with, harnessing power from a variety of different sources, including the body.
I think the fabrics, just because there's nobody here that has that example, I definitely think it is occurring though. Like Corning just came out with something with like new light tubes to make LEDs, kind of part of the fabric, and I think you're absolutely right. It's one of those things that it's just going to be incorporated into more and more textiles and become more seamless. And going back to the kids' comment, they might just naturally have that wired into their clothing, and that clothing will be washable. That's the other big thing, which is like whether you can wash the clothing if it's wearable. Right, if you take the battery out.
Just to piggyback on that for 1 second, can you actually turn on your skirt? I'm interested in seeing what that looks like. Can we dim them lights a little bit? I really want to see this.
I see it.
You can see it's fiber optic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tricolor, and it's based on a accelerometer.
So if you spun around really fast, like the girl in the Hunger Games, this will light up. Can we try that? I sort of want to try that. I don't know. Are you game? No? Just spin around. Oh, we saw a little bit. Outside, just spin in a circle? Okay, perfect. Spinning in a circle in the parking lot, 10 minutes. All right. One thing that I have seen, though, within the textile space that I can attest to is here in Philadelphia at Drexel University, I believe her name is Professor Genevieve. Her last name is escaping me. She actually, well, from what I was told, currently Drexel's, wow, I'm forgetting this so badly right now. They have a machine that can print in 3D, right? So it's a 3D textile printer, prints seamless. And from what I've heard, I haven't seen the machine just yet, it can actually weave in different fibers. You know, I haven't seen it much yet, but I think we're approaching to solving that problem very soon. So, last two questions before we go. So the question is, how do you get a grip on today's consumers, and how do you first see that need, and then how do you respond to that?
I think it's a very interesting question. You know, my company's not in the wearable tech space, but you know, understanding fashion and how quickly fashion trends change, I think that's something that's very important to, you know, pay attention to. And it's not an easy question to answer, especially, you know, with how rapidly fashion trends come in and out of style, and you know, specifically when it comes to the wearable technology. I think it would boil down to the core functionality of that wearable technology and what its fundamental uses are, and then you know that in itself being agile enough to adapt to, you know, changing trends and consumer preferences from the actual aesthetics of it. I think it's a very interesting question.
Yeah, I know. Like one of the things we want to do is open it up to fashion designers to design accessories, and then sell like, you know, the top voted ones. So having input directly from what they would like and what they would want to see, and also making it customizable would be fantastic. And that's one of the things we're talking about, how we can do that right now as we're building it.
And the last question. So the question is, within the both fashion and technology space, can both sectors create something so long-lasting that it will never die? I think my Casio watch is an amendment to that as well. Very old school.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's something that we were really surprised. We've been talking with jewelry manufacturers because we would reuse our circuits, similar to what Yasmin said, to put into different designs. And one of the things that we've heard from jewelry designers is like, well, what's going to be the warranty on this? It's going to be a lifetime warranty, right? And we're like, well, this technology is going to be in 2 years. It's not even about whether the battery survives. It's going to be, everything's going to be so much smaller, and people are going to want something different. But their view is very much like they wanted to create an heirloom. They wanted to have a precious metal. So something that would be, for example, like a $2,000 wearable that does get passed down. And how do you keep that technology current? So I definitely think that is something that's out there. Also, interestingly enough, they also weren't nervous about the battery issue. They want you to come into their stores to replace the battery. So that's kind of an interesting perspective that surprised us. So I think, you know, the integration, you know, it's great to come out with a single device, but we're talking about merging two industries here, and they don't know what the other one does. And there's going to be some really interesting collaborations, and there's going to be some pretty crappy collaborations. And I think ultimately the market will decide who's successful.
All right, so I'm going to give a round of applause to our panelists here, please.